and welcome to Migraine Realities. I'm Jillian, your host and fellow migraine warrior. This is a space for real talk about life with migraine. We talk about the hard stuff. I know this life from the inside. I live with chronic migraine, vestibular, hemiplegic, and chronic cluster headaches. That's just part of what I carry into these conversations. So come on in, let's talk. Today I'm joined by Ainslie Course, the president of Clusterbusters. She's coming to us from Glasgow, Scotland, as you can tell in just a moment. And it's such a privilege to have you. I'm so glad to talk to you again. And I'm just going to let you take it and introduce yourself. You have a nice introduction, I know. So you go right ahead.
Thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm very happy and privileged to do that. As Jillian says, my name is Ainslie Course. I am the president of a non-profit organisation called Clusterbusters. And we are all volunteers. Our board of directors, we are all volunteers. And all of us, bar one, actually have had cluster headaches for some time. We have one of our board members, Mary Franklin, who thankfully does not have headache disorders, but has been a specialist headache nurse in headache medicine she's retired now, but for 50 years. So we have a plethora of experience on our board, and our main mission really is to help improve the lives of those living with cluster headache, and not just the patients, but also their caregivers, their partners, their families, because this really is a family illness. It does affect everyone. The cluster patient is the one who experiences the physical pain, and your loved ones around you experience the emotional anguish of watching someone have a cluster headache and not being able to do anything. So our eventual mission is we would love to find a cure. At the moment, there are lots of treatment options, but there is no cure. This is an incurable condition. It's sometimes very difficult for us to be taken seriously with having cluster headache. And just so that people understand, people with cluster headache and people with MS, multiple sclerosis, is round about the same numbers. And everybody knows what MS is. And it's a kind of visible illness or condition. And cluster headache really isn't visible. When we have attacks of cluster headache or any debilitating headache disorder, we tend to retreat from those around us. We want to take it off privately into a bedroom or another part of the house, because you don't want anybody to see you like
Definitely.
that. There's a certain amount of embarrassment and shame, even with those closest to you, that you're suffering, but they're suffering also by watching. So we tend to sort of take ourselves off into some private space. And I think that's why cluster headache does not get the exposure that it deserves, because it's not a visible disability. We try to raise awareness, and the wonderful thing about social media, love it or loathe it, it is very helpful in allowing us a platform to share what we're doing, what's happening with research, events that we organise. We also have a Cluster Buddies programme through Clusterbusters, which was set up and directed by our now Vice President, Anna Williams, and she's done an absolutely superb job. Her programme has just grown and grown and grown, and she's reached so many people in all four corners of the world.
I'm one of them.
I know you are. And it's global. I've been doing this here in the UK and Europe for many years. My involvement with Clusterbusters started really before Clusterbusters began, and my involvement got stronger while Clusterbusters was being formed and in its infancy. So Bob Wald, our founder and executive director, I'm very delighted to see we've been friends for close to 25 years. And, he saved my life. This is something that every time I present, and I do a lot of panel events and press articles, TV, all of that sort of stuff in the UK and Europe. And I always credit Bob with saving my life, because if I wasn't brought to him, I was a hopeless case. And I pretty much started cluster headaches when I was 19. I'm now close to 59. So I celebrated 40 years of cluster headache.
Celebrated.
Well, you know, Gillian, I use the word celebrated because I never call myself a sufferer. I call myself a survivor. And for me, mentally, it is a coping mechanism for me to say, well, I am surviving this. I have learned how to survive this. And it wasn't always like that. My first cluster headache, you never forget your first one. I had no idea what was going on. You know, early hours of the morning, and this pain brought me to my knees. And I was training to be a nurse. I was a student at the time at college. And I just could not work out what was going on. I thought, the level of this pain, it's got to be something really serious going on in my brain. There's got to be an aneurysm. I've got to have a tumor, or, you know, I'm having a massive hemorrhage. This is serious, you know.
I'd like to ask, can you tell people what the symptoms of cluster headache are? That way we can understand, when you talk about it, what you went through, what you go through.
So the symptoms and what I woke up to on this first ever cluster headache was the most horrific pain on the right side of my head, centered around the eye, behind the eye. My eye was pretty much closed. Tearing, I don't have a huge amount of tearing with my clusters, but it's not streaming. The eye was red. I also don't have the runny nostril. I have the opposite. I have the congestion. And that's sometimes an indication for me that something is brewing. It's just dreadful. And I found myself on that first cluster and subsequently banging my head, punching my head, and you know, putting the heel of my hand into my eye socket and grinding. I just could not work out what was going on. This lasted probably a little over an hour, and I still lived at home, but I didn't want to wake my parents up. I didn't want to freak them out or worry them. And I just kept thinking, what is wrong? So I was pacing and rocking. I was trying to keep quiet. So I'm not a screamer. And I know a lot of people do scream. I'm more of a kind of, I'm a groaner. Like I was in childbirth, I didn't scream or shout, just a kind of, you know, it's a groan. But it's almost animal-like.
Right.
The is so intense. In fact, I actually questioned, did that noise actually come out of me? And prior to my first cluster, I was a very healthy young woman. I had the normal sort of childhood ailments, chicken pox and measles, that kind of thing. But I was never a headachy person. You know, I was never a drinker either. Didn't really drink alcohol. I'm one of these, I have a little sip just to be sociable at occasions, but I didn't really like the taste, and it wasn't really my kind of thing. So I didn't ever suffer hangovers. So I never really had cause to take any pain medication for headaches. I was physically fit, mentally fit, in the gym. I really looked after myself. So I could not work out what was going on. This kind of progressed, and I was having these attacks during the night, and then they were starting to creep in during the day, so it was affecting my studies. So I go to see my local GP, and yeah, well, you might have migraine. And I said, well, I know a little bit about migraine. I'm training to be a nurse, and this doesn't seem like migraine to me. And I was shot down straight away. Here's this young 19-year-old woman telling me that she doesn't have migraine, and this doesn't fit for migraine. I can't go and lie in a dark room. I can't stay still. I'm agitated. These attacks are coming at more or less the same time throughout a 24-hour period. We're going back to 1985. So we didn't have the benefit of the internet and social media platforms. So if you wanted information, you went to the library. I could go to the hospital libraries and look things up. Cluster headache kept coming up. And I kept going back to the doctors and saying, have a look at this. Do you think I tick all of these boxes? Well, Ainsley, you don't, because you have the pale blue eyes, and most of the people who have clusters have amber.
You're kidding.
No, this is true. Yeah. And you're female and you're too young. You don't have cluster headache. Okay, well, I don't have cluster headache, but I don't have migraine. Yes, you do. Here you go. Take these tablets. And if things don't clear, come back and see me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't bother to go back because it was a waste of time, and I would wait till the cycle was over. And I'd read about cycles. I always knew I had cluster headache. I did not get anyone else to support that diagnosis. So I kind of plodded on. I would have a break, and that break could be anything from a couple of months to a little over a year. And then these horrific, violent, horrid attacks would come back. So, of course, then you go back to the doctor again, and it's come back. And what did I do? Okay, here we are, try another tablet. If it doesn't work, come back and see me. And of course, none of these treatments worked. And if any of them did, their success was very short-lived. And I'm talking weeks, you know. So I was not happy trying all of these medications. And I think until I found Bob and got a proper diagnosis, I lost count, but I think some 60 plus different medications.
Oh, wow.
Which is a huge amount for a person who doesn't have any other pain or any other conditions and has never used medication. But I tried everything else, and I tried it because I thought, what if this is the one? What if this is the medication that will work? And I had said that at medication number 35 and medication number 41, but that's the desperation inside someone with cluster headache.
Did these cluster headaches affect you during the day or only at night?
Well, when they first started, they were nocturnal. I worked out there was a pattern. I started to keep a headache diary. Then they started to creep in during the day. When I would hit peak cycle, you're talking 8, 9, 10 attacks a day. You're just getting over one and then the next one. And of course, you have the sleep deprivation.
Yes.
You have the anxiety, the PTSD, because you know what's coming.
Yeah.
And you know it's just around the corner.
And it'll wake you up right out of sleep, just full blast.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people, when they get woken up or they get a little warning and it's a crescendo building up with the pain, mine are right in there. So within 10, 15, 20 seconds, I'm peaked. And of course, those nocturnal ones are so established by the time you wake to them that the nocturnal ones, oxygen really didn't do a huge amount for me. I don't use a face mask. I can't stand to put it on my face when I'm in an attack. So I would use the mouthpiece. And really for me, although I was inhaling oxygen, I was trying to watch my breathing and control my breathing. I was really using this as something to bite down on for the pain. Oxygen has worked for me very well on daytime attacks, you know, ones that the second I know it's coming, I'm on my oxygen immediately.
Can you tell us more about how you use oxygen? And
Yeah.
something so simple, all the pills, 60 different medications. I'm guessing Bob introduced you to that?
Yeah, he did. And I had to fight for my oxygen. So eventually, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. So eventually I saw a neurologist in London, and he diagnosed me within not even 5 minutes. You know, so, hi, Ainsley, I'm Dr. Thomas, have a seat. I sat down, and he said, how often is your right eye like that? So I said, well, my right eye is always smaller than my left one. It gets even smaller when I have these dreadful headaches. He said, tell me a little bit about these headaches. So I said, well, they come for anywhere between 8, 10 weeks to 8 months. Sometimes even a little longer. I've had some mega stubborn cycles that were just not responding to anything. I said, and then they just disappear. So he said, okay. I said, I've been diagnosed with migraine. I don't even go to see my doctor anymore. It's a waste of time because they're just throwing pills at me. None of them work. So he said, okay, stop. I sort of sat up and said, okay, tell me what is wrong with me.
Yes.
And he said, you have cluster headache. And I just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And I put my head on his desk. And the next thing he's kind of like rubbing my shoulder. He said, are you okay? And I said, you know what, Dr. Thomas, for 15 years, I have been telling my doctors that I've had to see, I think I have cluster headache. Please send me to a neurologist. And they wouldn't. I did go to see neurologists myself privately, and even they couldn't diagnose me. They were like, no, you don't tick the boxes, it's not you. So for me, that was an absolutely wonderful moment, because I think for a lot of people, their struggle is the fear of the unknown. They don't know what's wrong with them. This diagnosis was huge for me. Here is someone telling me that I've been right all along. So, okay, doctor, what can I do? I'm going to prescribe you injectable sumatriptan and medical oxygen. So that's how the oxygen started. I've learned some tips over the years from other cluster heads. I do a particular breathing technique.
With a particular mask.
Yeah, so I use the cluster mask, which has a really large oxygen reservoir. I always have the reservoir filled. I don't need to wait for the bag to fill. And I'm squeezing the bag as I am inhaling. So I was given some great advice before I take the first inhalation. Really huff out, completely empty your lungs. And as you inhale, you're taking this in and you're squeezing the bag almost so your lungs feel like they're going to burst. And then you're exhaling sharply again. So basically, you're making sure that it really is just oxygen going in to your lungs, and you're expelling everything out sharply with that sharp exhalation. And the same with your breathing in. I now count in my head, if I can, how many breaths in and out I'm taking. I usually try to do about 20, and then I start to hyperventilate on purpose. That tends to work for me. It can make you a little dizzy when you're doing that hyperventilating. But for me and for many others I know, it definitely does speed up the abort time with oxygen. Not always, but for the most times, it cut my time in half pretty much. I have tanks all over my home. It's a lovely comfort blanket. My first go-to when I have a cluster is oxygen. It's, to me, by far the safest abortive that there is. And there are lots of other abortives out there, alternative medications that can be used. I'm not going to discuss them, Gillian, because I know that you have a broad audience. But what I will say is clusterbusters.org. You can go on there and have a look at what's available for others should you wish to investigate or be curious about what these alternative medications are. Or alternatively, Ainslie, AINSLIE, at clusterbusters.org. If any of your listeners wish to reach out, I am more than happy to speak with them or direct them to our Cluster Buddies support program, where they can get one-on-one support or group support, whatever they would prefer. It's a lonely condition and it's isolating, and you also feel that you don't want to be a burden, not just to your spouse or your family, but to anyone who was willing in the community to reach out and help you. Almost kind of hold back a little bit because you don't want to lean too heavily. So I'm saying lean as heavily as you like. This is why we are here. We encourage people to come to us for support, for guidance, for suggestions to make living with cluster headache easier and more manageable, not just for the patient, but for their loved ones as well. help us guide you. What we are doing is we are paying forward what was done for us. Like I said earlier, I would not be alive if it wasn't for Bob Wald and his guidance. And I'll go back to talking about celebrating 40 years of cluster headache. The reason I use celebrating, and people think of celebration as a happy event, for me, it kind of is a happy event because, and I never thought I would ever say this, I am glad I have cluster headache. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth, not for the pain, but for the joy and the friendships and the beautiful connections that it's brought to me. And many of us in the cluster community say the same thing.
The very tight-knit, close family.
It's a closeness like I have never experienced anywhere ever in my whole life. And I often say this as well, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could bottle this when you need it, have a little tipple. The togetherness, the camaraderie, the support, even people who are in cycle themselves or are chronic cluster heads, they will always make time for you. If it's 4 a.m, 6 a.m, 2 a.m, 11 at night, it doesn't matter. Even through their surviving their cluster headache, they still always have time for each other. And it makes me feel very emotional when I think about it. It's such a special thing to be able to reach out when you have to and know that there'll be someone there. And I think you said it perfectly a few minutes ago, the tight-knit community, that feeling of understanding and validation. And we worry about new patients who have perhaps never met or spoken with anyone with cluster headache. You know, they must wonder, as we did when we didn't have an outlet, are other people with cluster headaches experiencing the same as me? Am I weak? Am I not able to stand this pain? What it gives is validation, particularly at our conferences when we can get several hundred cluster heads together, some of them brand newbies who've never met anyone with clusters. It's wonderful to watch them nodding along because all of a sudden they're in a place where they don't have to watch what we say. They don't have to be guarded. They can come out with whatever, because here I am amongst my own people who understand and who get.
It takes a weight off your shoulders, doesn't it?
Huge weight, you know, because you go from being alone to having a family in a nanosecond, you know, and it's like, my goodness, why did I not do this before? Why did I not attend one of these events before? And it's not all about just sharing patient perspective journeys. We have so much more. We have safe room sessions, we have support sessions for caregivers and for patients. We have oxygen demonstrations. We have lots of different professional speakers in our neurologists who come along and talk about treatments. They update us on research.
Tell us about the safe room. Tell people what that means.
So the safe rooms are sessions that you sign up for where you can come in and you can just vent, or you can just sit and listen, and they're limited to a certain amount of people, and that depends on how many people sign up for them. We don't like to overcrowd these sessions. We would rather put on extra ones so that we can allow each person to be heard if they wish to speak. And what happens in the safe room stays in the safe room. It's difficult to wear your heart on your sleeve and share your journey with people that you don't know. So this is why we use the safe rooms, so that people can come in and just say, you know what, I've had an absolutely horrific 6 months. I am at the end of my tether. Please help me. What can I do? What can you do to help me? And the person next to them is, oh, well, hi, Gillian, where do you live? Oh, you live in such and such in California. I am 60 miles away from you. So instantly you've got a connection, and those people have got a network, and that network just begins to grow and grow. So our safe rooms give a platform to those who wish to attend to be able to just let it all out or keep it all in and let someone else let it out and empathise. We do them for patients. We also do them for caregivers as well, because
Good.
our caregivers really need to have support because they're somewhat helpless. There's nothing they can do to take away our pain. If your loved one is hurting from anything, you want to go and you want to console them and you want to, what can I get you to make you feel better? Some chicken soup or a cup of tea or, that kind of thing. But you
And
can't.
anguish, you mentioned
Yeah.
anguish earlier.
Yeah.
That's the word. After a particularly bad attack, my husband went out into the living room because he always insists on sitting with me,
Yeah. Yeah.
always. And he was sitting on the couch and his head was just in his hands. I'd never seen him like that. And all I could say is use your words. And he eventually was able to come up with one word, and it was anguish.
Yeah. Anguish. Can
It's
you imagine?
helpless. He's helpless to
Well, how
do
would
it,
you feel if your husband was the clusterhead and you were watching him?
Mhm.
You would feel exactly the same.
Right?
Helpless,
Mhm.
anguished, distressed. Why is my wife going through this? Why her? We often question, why me? Why did I get this? Now we know this is genetics. This is why we have this. This is what we think. There's a fault in our brains. This is why we have cluster headache. And we're progressing with research to try and find out, is there a genetic link? We highly suspect there's a faulty hypothalamus. So it's wonky wiring, for
Mm.
want of a better expression. And for people to have to watch that is horrendous. As you say, your husband is anguish, his head is in his hands. My husband, Peter, many times has been clutching his head for the wrong reasons, not for headache reasons, but just because, what can I do for it? I feel helpless.
Mhm.
And most of our cluster heads do feel despair and helplessness, even when they're surrounded with great support. Those are feelings that you feel, and just to be able to offload that or to
Mhm.
say, I've had a horrendous day with clusters. So that's why we do the safe room sessions. This year we have a wonderful mental health specialist, Dr. Tammy, and she is sort of like psychologist, PhD, all about pastoral care and looking after your mental health. We're delighted to be bringing her to our conference this year. She is going to present to try and give suggestions to our attendees of coping mechanisms to deal with the anxiety and the PTSD and the depression and the sleep deprivation and the 24 hours of anguish in your brain where you're worried about the next attack. She's going to give us some coping mechanisms to better deal with that, because cluster headache is so much more than just pain. The pain is the most difficult to deal with aspect of having cluster headache, but you also have to think of the mental health impact as well. It can be pretty severe.
Mhm.
So this is why at our conferences we make sure that we cover lots of subject matter, all of the offshoot branches of living with cluster headache for the patient, for the caregiver, for the families, for work friends or colleagues, for your friends that you socialize with. We want to be able to offer something to them so that they have a better understanding and better coping mechanisms. Also, at our conferences, we're a friendly, sociable bunch of people. Even although we have this horrid condition, we know how to enjoy ourselves.
Mhm.
We all like to go out and eat, and those who are not in cycle like to maybe have a couple of drinks. This year is our 20th anniversary, so we are doing a themed Saturday evening of the Roaring Twenties.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
flapper girls and gangsters, Al Capone kind of thing. And we have some musical entertainment as well. So we all gel very well together and we have fun, as well as making sure that our attendees learn. and get a good support network as they move forward in trying to get good management and treatment options. And most importantly, a doctor that is willing to listen to the patient. If your doctor is not willing to listen to you and wants to just give you pills to take, you need to find another doctor. And reach out to us at Clusterbusters. We have built a record of great neurologists in the United States. You may have to travel a little bit, but ones that we can recommend. You can go along to this lady or gentleman. Yes, we help to connect them, and that person will understand you. They're not going to question you. They are familiar and very knowledgeable about cluster headache, and that cuts down a lot of the mental troubles that come along with, I need to find a good doctor.
Right.
We're kind of trying to cut out the middlemen, if you like. Now, it's not always possible. We may not have a doctor in that region, but we do our best to hook people up. I say with the Cluster Buddy program, that also helps if it's been done in a group setting.
What about people outside of the United States?
Yeah, so I've built up a little portfolio here in the UK and in Europe, and we're now getting people from other countries within Europe approaching myself and Clusterbusters saying, I'm seeing your work, how can we help? Okay, you can start your own cluster headache support group, whether you do that online or perhaps arrange a quarterly lunch. I used to do that here in Glasgow twice a year and would invite everyone along. Some people would turn up, some people wouldn't because they maybe be in cycle. And that's what we encourage people to do, is to support locally, find out. And if there isn't a support group in your area, let us help you to start one. And that's happening globally. We started out with it here in the UK and Europe and the US, but it's going to all different countries, to South America, to Canada, to the Philippines, to Mexico, all over the place, to Australia,
Wonderful.
to New Zealand. It's fantastic. And we all come together. And these are people that, you know, we've been Facebook friends for decades. Some of them I've never actually met in person, but I still consider them to be wonderful friends, even although I've never touched them or hugged them or anything like that. The community support is incredible. And that's why we encourage people to come to our conferences.
When is the next one? You've got it in Texas.
It's the 10th to the 14th of September.
You can go to clusterbusters.org to find out more.
Yeah, all the details are on there.
And I'll list it below.
Yeah, I'm going to actually be doing a few recorded videos to put out on social media over the next couple of weeks, just to explain to people who may see it. It will go onto my personal Facebook. It will also go onto our Clusterbusters page, just to tell people what to expect. We're a non-profit organisation, so we're doing this for the people. And this is not a sales pitch. This is me trying to encourage people to come along, because it really is a life-changing experience. We do have a small budget for scholarships. So for people who maybe think they can't come along because of financial constraints, I'm not promising we can help, but please reach out to us and we'll do what we can, even if we can help with part payment or something financially to support someone being able to attend the conference. We will do what we can. But it's a very different experience in person than it is on an online support group. Still wonderful, but in person is just fantastic, which again is helpful, and it allows our patients to validate their pain. You know, this is real. Many of us have been questioned about our pain, and our pain has been downgraded. Are you sure it's not imaginary? Well, doctor, you know, yeah, I mean, I'd bang my head off of a wall for an imaginary pain, you know, and that's the depth of misunderstanding or not understanding that we have to deal with. So all we can do is battle back and be accurate in the information that we give.
And you get better all the time. You get more and more resources. Your conferences are better each time.
Yeah, and our content gets bigger, and it's a real joy to us when doctors are coming to us to learn so that
Hmm.
they can forward that to their patients. It's a really nice feeling to know that we are being recognised by the medical professionals and they're saying, great, we're coming here to learn from you guys. We know all about cluster headache, of course we do, we're neurologists, but we want to hear the personal experiences. We want to hear what you need, what's lacking, what are we doing well, what are we not doing well,
Hmm.
what could we improve on, which is wonderful. They're coming to us so that they can better serve their patients from a treatment and management point of view.
And if you're not able to get oxygen, Clusterbusters can help you try to
We,
figure that out.
oxygen is really difficult, as I'm sure you probably know, in the United States.
Yes, it is.
It's pretty difficult, but there are ways, and we can try and support you on that. Again, something I'm not majorly familiar with, but I'm trying to teach myself about the insurance in the United States.
Mm.
So it's been a learning process for me. So there you go.
Hmm.
That's me in a nutshell.
That's a
That's my
big
journey.
nutshell, Ainsley. That's a
It
big nutshell.
So, like I said earlier, use us, lean on us. That is why we're here. We want to help, we want to pay forward what was done for us. We want to grow our community and make sure that those struggling out there know about us and can come to us for help and support.
Mhm. So wrapping up, thank you so much, Ainsley, for being here and for Clusterbusters and all the work that you do. You guys have certainly helped me a lot when I was at the end of my rope. Thank you
Sure.
so much for sharing and spending time with us. And I look forward to talking to you again.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks again for this platform to share my journey and to talk about Clusterbusters.
Thanks, Ainsley. Take care.